I love New York City as a whole. I like to create content talking about all the different boroughs and really just New York City as a whole, because I think there are so many pros and cons to all different boroughs and neighborhoods of New York City. But I do have to say, there is just something about living in Manhattan when coming to New York City. So I'm going to talk about the top 5 reasons I recommend people move to Manhattan if they can when coming to New York City for the first time. When people picture city life, Manhattan is typically what pops into their mind, because I truly believe that there's probably no other city in the world that feels as city-like as Manhattan. It is just the definition of city life. So if you want to get that true New York City feel, you're going to get that by moving to Manhattan. You can also get that in other boroughs outside Manhattan, but it depends on where you're living and depending on what you're looking for in your lifestyle. You might not get it in that other borough, and you're definitely going to get it when you live in Manhattan. You will not find a place more convenient than Manhattan. You can buy pretty much any good or any type of food that you want at almost any time in Manhattan. It's crazy to see what you can get here in Manhattan. You will be overwhelmed by all the different food that you can try here, because you can literally try something from almost anywhere in the world in Manhattan specifically. There are plenty of other areas in the other boroughs that offer this as well, but Manhattan as a whole has just so many different options. And it may be easier to get that in Manhattan depending on where you live, because you're probably more likely to be able to walk to a place in Manhattan or take a quick subway to get there than you would in another borough where it might be a little bit more complicated to get to a place that you're trying to go for that specific dining. There's no place that is more diverse than Manhattan. No matter where you are coming from, either in the country or in the world as a whole, you can find other people just like yourself in Manhattan. It is crazy to think that it's probably the biggest melting pot of the world. That is one of my favorite things about living in Manhattan, is that you're around so many other different cultures and diversity. And I truly think it is one of the best parts about living in Manhattan, is that you're around so much of that. Now, there are some neighborhoods in Manhattan that are known for not being as diverse as others, but overall, when you're looking at the whole borough as a whole, you can really find so much diversity. There is no place that has a better restaurant, bar scene, and nightlife scene than New York City. But overall, when it comes to restaurants, bar scene, and nightlife, which kind of lump into one category, New York City has it all. And Manhattan specifically has a really, really great late night scene. And if you're moving to New York City for that, you're going to want to be in Manhattan specifically, because that is where you're going to find so many different options. And when it comes to the restaurant, bar scene, and nightlife, there are other boroughs that do have this. Brooklyn does have a really big nightlife scene, depending on where you are in Brooklyn. As a whole, Manhattan is going to have way more, but there are neighborhoods in Brooklyn that you are going to have a big nightlife, late night scene. And then there are other neighborhoods in Brooklyn where you're going to have the complete opposite. It's going to be extremely quiet and residential. So it does range a lot. Queens and the Bronx does have a nightlife scene as well, depending on where you are, but it's going to be very, very different vibe than it is going to be in Manhattan. That is for sure. It's going to be way more local. In Manhattan, you're going to have so many people who are just visiting New York City and going out for the night there. And like I said, the Bronx and Queens is going to be much more of a local going out scene. Staten Island is definitely going to be your most residential borough. It's going to be very, very different. So if you want that true nightlife, bar scene, restaurants, going out all the time, Manhattan is going to be your place to go, because you're going to be able to find so much of that no matter where you live in Manhattan. Now, when I moved to New York City many years ago, I moved here for the career opportunities. And I do believe that no matter what career you work in, there's going to be so many different career opportunities for you in New York City. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to the rule, and there may be times where certain people have to move out of New York City for certain career opportunities in their company. Overall, the amount of companies that are either headquartered in New York City or that have offices in New York City, and also the networking that can be done in New York City, you're going to have so many different career opportunities in New York City as a whole. Now, do you have to live in Manhattan to have these career opportunities? Definitely not. I network with people all the time in all 5 boroughs of New York City, including Manhattan, but also the other 4 boroughs. But some people, when they're first moving to New York City, like to live in Manhattan because they like to live close to where they work, or they like to be able to network with people outside of work after hours. And they want to be able to do that in Manhattan and not have to worry about going back to the other boroughs. So depending on where you work and depending on your lifestyle, living in Manhattan might be easier for you to have those career growth opportunities. But it really all depends on your specific situation. You will never get bored living in Manhattan. I really don't think it's possible. And if somebody says that they're bored in Manhattan, they probably just don't really. And as a bonus in Manhattan overall, and in that case, I recommend trying another Manhattan neighborhood or even trying living outside in another borough, because Manhattan's not always for everybody. But I don't know. I always feel like there's just something about living in Manhattan. And I do feel like if you are moving to New York City and feel like you have to live in Manhattan, but are also considering other boroughs, you might want to consider living in Manhattan first and trying that out and seeing if it kind of like scratches that itch. Because sometimes you get that true New York City experience. Some people feel like they have to live in Manhattan, and that's completely okay. But also, I think there's so much to love about the other boroughs as well. So those are going to be the top 5 reasons to live in Manhattan. And like I mentioned many times in this video, these categories also could apply for the other boroughs at times, but it really depends on where you are and what your lifestyle and experience is. Now, I would love to know, what is your top reason for living in Manhattan? Or do you think that Manhattan is overrated and not even worth it? As always, I just love hearing from you guys.